let's talk about plugins for Photoshop, specifically Boris FX Optics. Let's go. Hey guys, Benjamin Eshagpoor here. That was probably way more formal than it needed to be. I want to talk about a piece of software that I don't really use as much in my day-to-day work as I used to many moons ago when I did a lot more photography than I do today, and that program is called Photoshop. But I think with this new plugin, Optics, that's about to change, because I have to say, in the short amount of time that I've played with this plugin, it has reinvigorated and just given me so much more of a passion to go out and shoot stuff, because there's so many great things and tools that you can do with this software. But if you're coming to this channel for the first time and you're not familiar with who Boris FX is, you almost certainly have seen their software being used in just about every film and TV show. More recently, probably Game of Thrones and Star Wars, most definitely. But at the end of 2019, they acquired a company called Digital Film Tools. Digital Film Tools was already creating a bunch of tools for photographers inside of Photoshop. And now that they're part of the Boris FX team, with Optics, they've included a number of their award-winning Sapphire effects that you can now use inside of Photoshop. I just wanted to say that this is not a sponsored video. Boris FX is not paying me to say any of this stuff. In fact, they're going to be watching this video the same time you're watching this video. They don't get any advance notification whatsoever of any of the things that I'm going to be saying. I do have an affiliate relationship with them. If you use my coupon code BM-Optics-20, you'll get 20% off of your Optics purchase at checkout. While I do have some kind of financial incentive, I really do genuinely love this plugin. Overall, I think it's a really great plugin. There are some things here and there that are a little wonky, and there are some things that I wish existed that don't currently exist. But in my history with Boris FX on the video side of things, I have the utmost confidence that they will address a lot of these issues and change them for updates only to make the product better. So let's go into Photoshop, and I want to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. So now I typically shoot all of my photos in RAW because RAW is basically the digital negative of your photograph. So I'm gonna actually kind of show you kind of what the workflow, or at least what I think the workflow would be when you're using a raw image. So here we have this this raw image right here. So I might typically use the raw processing features here inside of Photoshop to kind of do whatever tweaks I wanted to do inside of here. Shadows there. Well, there we go. Bring the shadows up a little bit. Do some vibrance things here. Turn that down. Anyway, do any of your developing process that you would normally, typically do, and then open that up inside of Photoshop. So if we open up the layers panel right here, so here is our layer right here. So that's kind of typically what I would do. I would normally go through the developing process and process that raw image the way that I normally would. I wouldn't change that for anything. But now that we have the raw image here open inside of Photoshop, one of the first things that we need to do before we can apply optics to the photo is we need to convert this to a smart object. Then I'm going to go up here to Boris FX Optics, and I'm going to apply that. So here we are inside of Optics. Now, for this particular photo, one of the things I wanted to show off is I want to show off if you've ever used Photoshop to here, actually show you. Let's see here. So if you've ever used, go into the render category here, and if you've ever used lens flare, you know right away that the lens flare inside of Photoshop looks like crap. And it's the stock lens flare that everybody is using unless you have access to better lens flares, whether it's a stock image or in a lot of cases when I used to add flares to my still photos in After Effects, I would use either Sapphire lens flare or I would use Video Copilot's optical flares. So the lens flares here inside of Photoshop look horrible. So immediately, that is one thing that we can remedy with optics. So I'm gonna go ahead and start up optics, and here we go. And I'm gonna remedy that by using the lens flare inside of optics, and it's in the light category. I know that because I've tested it out and whatnot. But if you don't ever know where a particular filter is, you go to the filters tab and you just search lens flare. So so we've got lens flare right here. So let's go ahead, and I want to put a flare right there on that light. Now, for this particular setup, I probably want to use something. Actually, let's use California sun. This picture right here is at the beach in Santa Monica, here in Southern California, and so as you can see here, you've got a huge list of presets that you can use. Actually, I'm going to use this one instead. So that's going to be my flare right there that I'm going to use for this. Now, you can switch over to your parameters tab to get access to all of the parameters for this particular lighting effect. And you also have, for those of you who aren't familiar with Sapphire's lens flare, you have so much access to every detail of this particular flare. You've got the hotspot right here, but you could also change the angle of the hotspot as well too, and kind of how you're looking at this and whatnot. So, but you have your basic parameters here: scale, brightness. You can blur the flare if you wanted to as well too. You have hotspot parameters as well too that you can play around with. One of the, in my opinion, one of the underrated features inside of lens flare is you can actually add some natural atmosphere to your flares as well too. But if you ever wanted to get under the hood, you just click on the Edit Lens button, and it launches the Flare Designer. Now, the Flare Designer gives you access to every detail of this particular flare. You have the hotspot, you have all of these other different parameters or aspects to the lens flare itself. Just took out all of the actual glass elements of that particular flare. You go back in here and it updates here. I'm actually going to bring down that blur. And oh yeah, so if I brought down that, bringing down the blur, you can actually see the atmosphere on this. So now, something I typically almost always do with my lens flares is I actually like to have elements kind of on, anytime I'm looking at a flare, I kind of want to have elements, or looks like there's kind of schmutz on the lens. Well, you can actually do that actually inside of the Flare Designer. You can add, if you go into the components section, you can add like lens dirt. There's all kinds of lens dirt here that you can add. You want to bring up the size. You also want to bring up, I think you want to bring up the brightness as well too, so that you'll be able to see. You can kind of see it in this preview window right here. When we go out of the Lens Designer and come back into optics, and you can actually kind of start to see some of the lens flare right here. You can kind of see some of the dirt right there. So, you know, that's just lens flare right there. Let's look at another example. So as I mentioned before, one of the great things about using smart objects and using that as your workflow is, for me, using After Effects and Premiere, smart objects is like nesting a timeline inside of Premiere, or pre-comping something inside of After Effects. So that's basically kind of what smart objects does. So in this particular instance, because again, we're using optics as kind of the final processing tool of this particular photo, any editing that I want to do to it, I need to do inside of the smart object. So in here, I'm going to double click. So in this particular instance, let's do some touch-ups to this. So I'm going to get my my healing brush tool, and I'm going to start getting rid of some of these imperfections. And we'll start kind of cleaning some things up here and there. And let's just go through here. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time because I just kind of wanted to kind of show you kind of the basics of some things here. So this is not really a Photoshop tutorial, but hey, if you want to learn more about some of these tools, then definitely let me know in the comments below. But as you can kind of see here, I'm kind of using the healing brush and the healing tools to do kind of a lot of these, you know, kind of touch up things and whatnot. Anyway, so once all this stuff is done, I close out of this and I hit yes and I save that, and it updates that for me. So you can't really see it here. Actually, oh, here we are. So you can kind of see it here when we go inside of this smart object. So it's kind of there. So there, that's baked into it. So now when I want to start playing around with optics, I have all of that stuff kind of baked in to that photo. So now that when I start using optics, let me show you, let's go to Film Lab. Let's go to Looks. So here inside of Looks, we have a bunch of presets that we can apply to this particular photo. Now these are just the looks. This is just the looks category inside of Film Lab, but you also have film stocks right here, which is also really great if you want to get a nice film look to your photos. You have a bunch of actual photographic film stocks that you can apply to your photos at the click of a button. Now, if you ever wanted to actually dial it back in a certain area, I'm going to show you. You could actually create like a spot mask right here, and in this particular instance, it's applied to the white area of the mask. So if you wanted to invert that, let's say you didn't want to apply it to his face, you wanted to apply it to everywhere else, you just hit invert and it inverts that, and then now you have this. You know, kind of this spot filter, so where it's only affecting the white areas of the frame, which in this particular instance is at the very edge. Okay, so I'm gonna click done. All right, let's look at another photo. Okay, so here we have another photo. This is a picture of my wife. This has optics applied to it already, so let me remove the filter right now, and this was the raw version of the file, but you can kind of see there's kind of a drastic change to a lot of the stuff. I wanted to show off, if you take a look at the skin on this, you'll see some, you know, kind of roughness and some kind of splotchiness of the actual makeup itself. And within one of the filters that is a sapphire filter that's been included into the optics tool set, on the left-hand side here, you'll see your effects stack. Now, for people who use Photoshop a lot, one of the things that you have to think about is that this is not your traditional Photoshop layering or anything like that. This is an effects stack. So you start, actually, here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this. So here's kind of how you start things. You start with your original image right here, and then each effect that you apply onto that is then stacked on top of the one below it. So if I have lens distortion, so I'm basically stacking all of these effects onto. My wife is going to kill me for doing this, so I'm going to close out of this and not save because I don't want to save that effect. So that's something that you need to consider with optics. Is it's not your typical kind of layered compositing application like Photoshop is. You're stacking layers one on top of the other. And actually, let me go back into this so you can see how I built this particular effect that we have here. So I'm going to turn off all of these effects, and we're going to go one by one. And we're going to look at each one of these, and so we're going to start here with one of my favorite effects inside of optics here. It's called ozone. And one of the great things about ozone is you can build up a layered kind of contrast, or kind of build a little bit more depth into your photo by going through, and what it does is it isolates. In this particular instance, it's looking at the luminance. So it goes through your image and it gives you all these different luminance zones in here. So you have very specific control over various different aspects of your image. And you can actually change this to hue, saturation. You can look at the individual channels, but in this particular instance, it's extracting the luminance values of this. So I was able to, kind of build some contrast in this particular image in these various different zones. So if you go to like the darkest of darks right here, so let me actually play around with. See, you can see how it isolates that specific area of that particular image. So you're only affecting that aspect of your photograph. I'm not going to do that with that one. Let me. So in this particular one, what I did is I actually warmed up the darks. So I brought in a little bit more of the actual natural, some of the natural reds in her actual hair. With ozone. And so then I can use ozone to kind of build on top of that all the different layers in this particular photo. So so if we actually turn this off, you can see that I kind of built I built up the various different areas of this particular photo. So on top of ozone, I added S-Beauty. So S-Beauty is a sapphire effect, and it's basically a skin smoothing effect. And again, I use it all the time in Premiere to smooth out the skin of a particular subject. But now I have access to it here in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and apply this. I'm not going to walk you through all the different parameters inside of Beauty, because there's a lot to unfold here. And if you would like to have a specific tutorial on S-Beauty, I can absolutely do that. Let me know in the comments below. But in this particular instance, I just wanted to show you that I'm applying this in kind of I'm kind of smoothing out the base of the skin tones right here. And then on top of that, I added a selective saturation. So I went through and I kind of added in a little bit more of the red tones in her lips. I have a curves effect on top of that to kind of dampen down some of that in the rest of the image. On top of that, I added a lens flare, which is right here. And then on top of that, I added the center spot, which gives me some nice diffusion. Let's see here. Let me actually bring it here. So let's go to the effect. So you can see this little marker right here. This is your center point of that center spot. So I had it right here because I want to make sure that her eyes are in focus, and that it softens up or blurs out the various different other areas of the image. Now, another one here on top of that, I use Net, which is a diffusion filter. So I'm actually going to show you where that is. It is in the diffusion and blurs. So which is also, you've got this diffusion. There's so many things that I can unpack here. So if there's something I go over in this particular video that you would like me to spend a little bit more time on, definitely let me know in the comments below. But I use the Net filter here to kind of give an added layer of It's a little bit hard to see here in this screen capture, but so it's adding basically another kind of, net basically simulates what it would look like if you were to actually take a picture or if you were to actually place a net in front of the lens of your camera. So that's what net is doing. It's actually, you get some nice diffuse looks and some nice effects if you actually are placing a net in front of your lens and taking a picture through that net. So that's what this particular filter does, is it simulates the same idea or same concept of doing that. And in this particular instance, I have it set really low. Where did it go? There we are. So I have it set to 50%. There we go. We're adding that back. But instead of the opacity, this is the kind of full opacity right there. I bring down the opacity a little bit, so it's giving it kind of a nice little kind of glow, if you will, to the look of this particular image. And then on top of net, I have S free lens, which is also another sapphire effect that you now have access to inside of your photos. Now, free lens is pretty dense plugin, and I'm actually going to show you some of the presets right here, so you can kind of see some of these effects that are being applied. So it's pretty dense. There's a lot of parameters inside of here. Again, if you want to know more about free lens, definitely let me know in the comments below. I can spend more time on just this effect. But I'm not going to spend time on going through it here. I'm going to go back to, there we are. There we go. Okay, so let's go back to net. There's net. I've got free lens on top of that. And then I think the last one that I did was I did a film stock. I applied a film stock on top of this. Now the film stock, this is the actual film stocks filter. And as you can see right here, there's a bunch of presets. I didn't use the Agfa Optima. I don't remember which film stock that I used, but I'm gonna undo that because I went in here and I actually kind of customized my own film stock. I did add some grain to this, some natural film grain to this, as well as some other things. And that's kind of what I did with this particular picture. I'm gonna stop here for now. We talked about some of the more natural, organic, photographic things that you can do with optics, like lens flares and film stock emulations. But in the next video, I want to talk about some of the more visual effects oriented things that you can do with optics, like lightning bolts, stars, and moons. And there are some really interesting warp and distortion effects that come straight out of the Boris FX Sapphire toolset. One of the things to keep in mind is that optics is not a Lightroom or Photoshop replacement. It's more of an enhancement tool that gives you the ability to give a final polish or a final look to your photographs, and even add some visual effects if you would like to do that as well. If you'd like to get your own copy of optics, I'll put a link in the description below. One of the great things about Boris FX products is that you can get, I'm pretty sure it's a 15-day trial license to be able to test it out and see if it's something that you want to add to your tool set. After trying it out, if it's something that you decide that you want to add to your photographic post-production workflow, then go to the Boris FX website, use my coupon code BM-optics-20 at checkout, and you'll get 20% off your purchase. You can either get a subscription or you can get a perpetual license. A perpetual license is you just own it outright and you can use it as long as you want to. A subscription, obviously, is you have to have an active subscription to be able to use it. Now, with the subscription model, you can either get a yearly subscription or you can get a monthly subscription. One of the great things about having a month-to-month license versus being locked into a yearly contract is Let's say you have a whole bunch of photo sessions lined up in the month of June, but you've got nothing in July. Well, you pay the price of a couple of lattes and then you have it for June. And if you don't need it in July, then you don't need to pay for it in July. And then you can just pick up where you left off if you need it again. If you're not into subscriptions, you definitely need to get yourself the perpetual license. And at $149, that's a really, really good price. Sapphire plugins alone on the video side of things are way more than $149. But if you think about it this way as well too, to get some of the things that you get with the optics plugin, like lightning and light leaks and stars and moons and a bunch of other things, you would have to buy stock footage and then composite all of that stuff into Photoshop, and you could be spending way more than $149 on stock imagery. So you're saving yourself a bunch of money just in that alone. There's a lot of things that you can do in optics that you can't do natively inside of Photoshop. So it really is a really, really good deal. And using my coupon code BM-optics-20 is going to get you the best discount that you will get on optics. You cannot beat 20%. If you got value out of this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.